continuing resolution, one that would simply keep the government open and allow us to continue our work on the appropriations process. To be clear, there are no Republican priorities included in the CR. Let me repeat again. There are no Republican priorities included in the CR. It simply keeps the government funded. It is the same kind of CR that Democrats passed 13 times under President Biden, yet now they refuse to vote for it. Let's just take a minute to review. Here are the 13 clean CRs that were passed during the Biden administration. 13 of them. You can count them. Oh, gee, how did the Democrats vote? I don't know. Let's check. Well, here's the percentage of Democrats that voted for each of those 13 clean CRs during the Biden administration. Now, Mr. President, from sitting way back there, I know your eyes are pretty good. Former Navy SEALs, so they might be diminished a little bit by now, so I'm going to help you out here. On the first one, 100% of the Democrats voted for it. On the second one, 100% of the Democrats voted for it. On the third one, 100% of the Democrats, same kind of clean CR we're looking at right now, but it was under Biden. That's the difference. Oh, third one, 100% of the Democrats. Fourth one, 100% of the Democrats voted for the clean CR. On the fifth one, 100% of the Democrats voted for the clean CR. On the sixth one, 100% of the Democrats voted for a clean CR, the same kind that none of them will vote for now. Well, I guess we've got 3. But we've got to get enough to get 60 votes. Oh, let's see, I lost count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I'm number 7. 100% of the Democrats voted for it. The eighth one, 100% of the Democrats voted for it. Now, on the ninth one, I don't know what happened. Maybe one of them was gone. Who knows? But gee whiz, we dropped all the way down to, we only got 98% of the Democrats on that one. Only 98% voted for that one. But the good news is they were right back on the next one, 100%. I think that's number 10, 100% on number 11, 100% on number 12, and gee whiz, they finished with only 98% of the Democrats on the 13th one. You kind of get the point maybe, right? Come on. What in the world's going on here? And then they have the gall to go out there and say, oh, well, you know, they're not shutting down the government. It's ridiculous. I don't know how there can be any doubt about it. And for anybody that thinks that this shutdown should be stopped right now, they better call their favorite Democrat on the phone and say, hey, it's time. It's way, way, way past time. But right now, instead, our colleagues across the aisle have chosen the different path. They've taken our government hostage, demanding more than $1 trillion in new spending just to keep the lights on. $1 trillion just to keep the lights on. And to pay people, federal employees, military, everybody else that's working. That is not compromise, Mr. President. That's called coercion. That is not compromise. That is coercion. That's holding our government hostage. And while this political stalemate drags on, American families are paying the price. Vital programs that hardworking families rely on, programs they've paid into and depend on, have been shuttered or are dangerously close to running out of money. Several states are now warning that they will be forced to shut down SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits, as soon as November 1st if the shutdown continues. That means millions of Americans could lose access to the assistance that helps them put food on the table. Meanwhile, our economy is losing $15 billion in GDP each week as long as this shutdown persists. Many federal employees, including critical air traffic controllers, they're working, they're not getting paid. How about our Border Patrol agents? It can be a pretty dangerous job. They're not getting paid. They're working, they're not getting paid. Or how about this group? Our troops. Mr. President, you were a Navy SEAL. You were in harm's way. We've got people in harm's way, and they're not getting paid because now the Democrats want to say somehow this clean CR shouldn't be voted for, and that somehow they're cooperating, they're trying to collaborate when instead they're holding our government hostage. In rural America, our farmers, ranchers get left behind. Many of them are out in the field right now, harvesting, working on bringing in their crops, getting ready for next year. Programs, services they depend on with USDA they can't access. That means more uncertainty at a time when they can least afford it. Look, the list goes on and on. It goes on and on and on and on. But the bottom line is this. We need to get government. We have offered over and over again, as my colleague said, to work on any and all issues. But you do it once you get the government open. This has gone on, I'd say long enough, but actually way too long. And I don't know at what point Democrats are going to decide to come back and start doing their job, which is governing. But we are eagerly awaiting it. And for the American people are the ones that pay the price when the Democrats take our government hostage. And as I've made very clear here, there is no doubt, but that is exactly what they are doing. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Senator Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do want to thank my friend from North Dakota. We see things slightly different, but one thing I think we'd probably agree on. You know who is getting paid? The House of Representatives, who's been on vacation since the middle of September. And gosh, wouldn't it be great if they were actually on the floor debating this issue as well, as opposed to getting a taxpayer-paid vacation for over a month? But, you know, Mr. President, I think one of the things we would all kind of agree on, our nation's public servants are not political pawns. I say with due respect to my friend from Wisconsin, you know, the so-called Shutdown Fairness Act, in my view, is anything but fair. And frankly, this entire year has been anything but fair for all of our federal employees who show up every single day to serve the American people. Because remember, before Russ Vought even set foot in the Office of Management and Budget, he bragged that he wanted federal workers, his words not mine, increasingly be viewed as villains and put them in trauma. Think about that. This wasn't some political misstatement or slip of the tongue. It's frankly a mission statement. And unfortunately, that's exactly what we've seen from Mr. Vought, from President Trump, and from those enabling him. In just 9 months, they've forced out or driven into early retirement more than 148,000 federal employees. That's not efficiency or reform. It's an assault on the very people who work every day for the American people. And God knows we can improve, but also make government perform. Now, let's be clear. It's not this side of the aisle, Democrats, who have cherry-picked a few favorite programs to protect. We have been consistent on calling on the administration totally reckless regard for vital services the American people rely on to keep them safe and secure, and standing up for those folks who deliver those services. So forgive me, Mr. President, when I say I don't think the Shutdown Fairness Act has anything to do with fairness. Once again, federal employees are being treated not as partners serving the American people, but as punching bags for Vought and the president's political agenda. Right now, the president is trying to riff another 4,000 federal employees. Not just, I believe, unfairly, but actually illegally based upon a court's recent decision. And thank goodness the courts have stepped in. Matter of fact, many of us were at the OMB headquarters across next to the White House just last week, meeting with federal employees, demanding Mr. Vought and his team listen, not to us, you don't have to listen to us, we're on political different sides, but listen to the very federal workers whose jobs, and make sure that we get the government reopened, not trying to leverage this for some kind of political win. We're talking about special education programs that support kids with disabilities. We're talking about the CDC, whose experts track outbreaks and try to keep us safe. We're talking about a program called the CDFI Fund at Treasury, a program which broad bipartisan support that helps invest and get access to capital in rural communities and urban communities. And again, on this one, I got to thank particularly Mike Crapo, but a whole lot of my Republican colleagues for being willing to push back. Let's be crystal clear. These actions are not some accident. This is a deliberate choice, a deliberate effort to hold federal workers hostage in order to jam through an agenda that at the end of the day is going to drive up health care costs for millions of Americans. Instead of sitting down with us and working to keep premiums affordable, they're using these very federal workers, and I got a ton of them in Virginia, as political pawns. It's wrong, it's cruel, and it's not going to work. That's why I'm proud to join both the ranking member, Peters, who will be here, I believe, shortly, and my good friend from Maryland, Senator Van Hollen, on legislation to ensure that not the Trump administration pick and choose who we ought to go ahead and pay, but legislation to ensure that all federal workers, and by the way, and the contractors who work side by side with them, get paid during this shutdown. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a moment for every senator to decide. Are you going to stand with the federal workers who keep the government running, or are you going to stand with those who want to traumatize them and make them all be viewed as villains? This is an actual chance. In a few minutes, we're going to have to make sure that those workers can feed their families, pay their mortgages, while this Republican shutdown drags on. I mean, a lot of language on this floor about who wants to support federal workers. Well, you're going to shortly have a chance, every senator will have a chance to prove whether they're on the side of not selectively paying federal workers, but paying all federal workers as we try to bring this shutdown to an end. I urge my colleague to do the right thing. Let's get it done. And I thank Senator Van Hollen for his leadership on this issue. With that, I yield the floor.
Mr. President,
Senator from Maryland.
I want to thank my colleague from Virginia, Senator Warner, and other colleagues who are joining together to support the proposal that we are putting forward today. But I think we should all say that the best way to make sure that federal employees, all federal employees, get paid and that the American people get the benefit of their services is to reopen the federal government and do it now, which is why I and my Democratic colleagues have voted 7 times now to reopen the government without giving Donald Trump a blank check and while making sure that we prevent a health care crisis in this country when people's health care premiums and costs go through the roof. Because when Republicans passed their so-called big, beautiful bill, they extended the tax breaks for billionaires and very wealthy people. The one tax cut they did not extend was the one that allows middle-class families to afford health insurance. And so they left in place a ticking time bomb that's going off now. We'd like to defuse that time bomb. Instead of negotiating on that, the president has been AWOL. He has been engaged in discussions overseas regarding the Middle East, been on the phone a lot with Vladimir Putin. That's all good, but you would think the President of the United States could carve out just a little time to help reopen the government, to have a negotiation on reopening the federal government. Instead, he's bringing down Republican members of the House and Senate to the White House and whining and dining them and patting them on the back and saying, good job for, keeping this government shut down and not entering into a negotiation to bring it to a close. And of course, our House colleagues, the Speaker of the House, Speaker Johnson, has essentially got the House on a 5-week now, I don't know if we're on 6 weeks, paid vacation. I mean, they are AWOL here in the middle of this shutdown. What is the president focused on? He's asking the Justice Department to pay him $230 million for legal bills, right, directly into his pocket. He's talking about giving his buddy in Argentina a $20 billion taxpayer bailout while farmers across the country are getting hit hard because they can't sell their soybeans to China, and he's demolishing the East Wing of the White House, which is a metaphor for what he is doing to the country and people who worked for him to get him elected. I mean, he's betraying the very people he said he was going to stand up for when he said he was going to focus on prices and costs. And yet, when it comes to trying to just prevent this huge spike in healthcare costs that our people are experiencing, the president doesn't want to talk about it. So we should not be punishing federal employees for something they had nothing to do with. They're not responsible. They're innocent bystanders. They all want to get back on the job and provide services to the American people. And I'll be putting forth a proposal to say that they should not be punished and they should be paid. Now, we'll hear later today, we're going to be taking up here in the Senate a piece of legislation from Senator Johnson. And that proposal would pay federal employees who are currently working right now. Our proposal doesn't discriminate among federal employees. And here's the really dangerous part, I would argue, about Senator Johnson's proposal. We have a president, President Trump, who, along with Russ Vought, who's his guy in the cockpit at OMB, this is the guy who said publicly that he wanted to inflict trauma, that's his word, not mine, inflict trauma on the federal workforce. If you allow them to decide who they're going to keep on the job in the federal government and who they're going to pay, you're giving them also a blank check as to who they're going to send home and who they're going to punish by not paying. That's what they've been doing. Much of what they've been doing is illegal. In fact, we have a federal court in California that's already said that their layoffs of some of the federal employees and some of the agencies are illegal. But if you just let them decide who's going to get paid and who's not, you weaponize that illegality. You weaponize the federal government. And by the way, and I think we all know this, if President Trump gets to keep the folks he wants on the job and pay the folks that he wants who are on the job and nobody else, he'll have even less incentive to end the government shutdown. He'll have the government he wants, not the one that has been supported on a bipartisan basis by the United States Congress. So giving the president a blank check to decide which federal employees to punish and which ones not to punish is a very dangerous thing at this moment. That's why the proposal I'm putting forward, and Senator Peters will have an even narrower version that he will be put forward if our Republican colleagues don't support the one that I'm advancing along with Senator Warner, Senator Kaine, Senator Alsobrooks, and others. These proposals say that federal employees should not be punished. Now, we've already made that decision. We've already made that decision as a Congress in the past. During the first Trump shutdown, that was the 35-day Trump shutdown. During that shutdown, Senator Cardin, myself, and others, we passed a piece of legislation that was signed by the president that says at the end of a shutdown, federal employees get fully paid. They're held harmless. Why did we decide to do that? Because we collectively made the right decision that federal employees who have nothing to do with the government shutdown should not be the ones punished for something they were not culpable in. That was the right decision. What my proposal and our proposal will do is based on that idea that no federal employee should be punished for something they had nothing to do with. And not only should they get repaid at the end of this, but why would we say to them that you can't have enough pay to make your electric bills, or pay your water bills, or provide for your family? Why should federal employees be the ones who are punished for the government shutdown? Why should they be the ones that have to overdraft their bank accounts, be penalized for that. That's not fair. So the proposals that we're putting forward say that in this government shutdown, federal employees and, yes, certain federal contractors who have nothing to do with this political situation that we face, they should not be the ones to bear the burden. And we certainly shouldn't set up a system where the President of the United States gets to decide what agencies to shut down, what they can open, who to pay and who not to pay, who to punish, who not to punish. That just gives him a blank check to put in place political cronies and pay them, and send home hardworking civil servants who perform important functions. So that's what our proposal will do. And for any of our colleagues, regardless of the side of the aisle, who agree that federal employees should not be the ones who are punished for something they got nothing to do with, I hope we'll all agree to support this measure. Now, I don't know if Mr. President, Senator Peters wants to talk at all on this particular proposal. He's going to be talking on the next proposal. I know that some of my colleagues are on the way to the floor as we speak, Senator Kaine and others. And I will, when they arrive, I will return the floor to them to have say their piece. But at this time, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of S. 3039, introduced earlier today, that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Mr. President,
Senator from Wisconsin.
reserving the right to object. Mr. President, I've come here today on the floor in good faith. I've come here not to argue. I've come here trying to find agreement. And I've listened to the senator from Virginia, now the senator from Maryland, and I have to say, I don't know exactly what percentage, but probably 95, 98% of what they've said, I agree with. Now, I do have to point out, and this would be the most, I would say this is a partisan comment. We have voted now 12 times on a measure that would open up government. It's what the House passed as a clean CR, similar if not identical to what happened 13 times during the Biden administration, just a clean CR to open up the government at President Biden's levels, funding levels that Democrats voted for. By the way, House Republicans could have come with a table to a CR with $1.5 trillion of spending reductions to match the $1.5 trillion of spending increase the Democrats wanted. And now there'd be areas of compromise. But the House Republicans basically said, here's the deal. Let's not shut down government. But let's not make federal government workers pay for our dysfunction. So they passed a clean CR at President Biden's funding levels. So again, that's been voted down 12 times, regrettably. But let me set that aside. I found out about the senator from Maryland's proposal last night. Got the language this morning. I've got the bill here. And first of all, I kind of chuckled because the name of the bill is I've actually got the true Warren Buffett tax, and we ought to talk about that later on. You might find that interesting. But so he's taken my bill, the Shutdown Fairness Act. Now his bill is the true Shutdown Fairness Act. And again, I haven't done a word count comparison, but it's probably like 95+% of the Shutdown Fairness Act. That's a good thing. That shows there's a lot of areas of agreement. I come from the private sector. You don't get a whole lot accomplished arguing all the time. It's all about finding areas of agreement. I got a product, you want to buy it, now we'll haggle over the price. Okay, so I got a product, you want to buy it, now we need to haggle over the price. Now, the three areas of the differences in these bills, I think I've got this right. I'd asked the senator from Maryland to confirm that. Your bill is only for this fiscal year. My bill would just end this, punishing federal workers for our dysfunction forever.
I mean, I think we should make it permanent. The Senator from Maryland's bill includes furloughed employees. Now, the fact of the matter is, when all this is said and done, when we finally end this dysfunction, we fund government through an appropriation, because the 2019 Government Fair Treatment Act, the Government Fair Treatment Act, they'll get paid anyway. So my bill is obviously targeted to the people we're forcing to work, but I'm not necessarily opposed to paying furloughed workers as well. That's something we can talk about, okay? The last difference is it limits reduction in force. Now, I come from the private sector. Nobody likes to terminate employees. Nobody. But in the private sector, when a business is facing bankruptcy, sometimes business owners are forced to do that to preserve the other jobs. The federal government is $38 trillion in debt. I don't think we should limit the president's ability, the chief executive's ability to properly manage the federal government and make the tough decisions sometimes to reduce the workforce. You know, cut out some government functions. But again, that's something we can talk about. So again, I think, in fairness of the more than 2 million in federal employees that are now being forced to work because they're termed accepted, but that means they're essential. They're protecting our nation. They're protecting our safety and security. They're writing Social Security checks. To see that they get their paycheck so they don't have to work DoorDash, so they don't have to go to food banks, so they're not under that stress. I am asking in good faith, let's figure out how to get that done. Now, I mean, I could propose, take this, I'll change the name of mine, by the way, if you want to call it the true, because I think it's the true Shutdown Fairness Act. I would be, today, right now, I'd be willing to add furloughed workers, because we're going to pay them anyway. Would you, I'm just asking, I mean, would you substitute your bill, take my bill, substitute it in? I've actually got my staff to write the language to do this. Red line is probably not ready for prime time. We really need to get through Ledge Council, that kind of stuff. But would you take my bill, add furloughed workers, say it's a done deal? Is that something you'd accept here today?
I'm happy to, if you're yielding the floor to me.
Yes.
The short answer is we do want to pay all federal employees because none of them should be punished. But we also don't want them to be fired and riffed during this period of time. I mean, you said in the private sector, people don't like to fire employees. I know, Senator, you've read the remarks of Russ Vogt, the head of OMB. He wants to visit, quote, trauma on federal employees, and he wants to fire a lot of them. He has said so.
That's, again,
but that's an important piece here, right?
So,
because
Senator, again, I'm trying to keep this. Let's not argue, okay? Let's focus on areas of agreement. So even reduction in force. Okay, again, I think we probably have a philosophical agreement there. I'm not associating myself with anybody else's remarks. I'm just talking about that's something that I think reasonable people can disagree with. And I think reasonable people can come to an accommodation. Again, when we're talking about making sure that 2.8, I think is about the number, 2.8 million federal employees aren't worried about getting a next paycheck. I mean, that so overwhelms quite honestly, the smaller differences about the length of the bill or, what reduction in force. Again, and I'm willing to come a long way.
Senator,
I'm willing to come a long way in terms of including furloughed workers. So again, what I'm suggesting is the way to do it. And by the way, this could be a wonderful example for this body. Working on a piece of legislation that, again, you bring it to the floor. We filed it. I know it got Rule 14, but we're doing it the right way. We're going to ask for a cloture vote on it. Get it on the floor, open it up to amendments, perfect it. See what the body of the Senate wants to do with this piece of legislation that, again, we probably agree 95% of it or higher. The way to do it is when I offer my bill and we vote on cloture, vote for cloture. Let's get on the bill. Let's start discussing today. Maybe if we're so successful, maybe if we find the differences are so slight, we can pass it by UC later in the day. But we do need to take this back to our conferences. We do need to go to ledge staff. We need to perfect this. It'll probably take more time. But again, passing it by unanimous consent is not the way to do it. It just isn't. I mean, I appreciate the attempt. I appreciate the dialogue. And that's not what I'm asking. In all sincerity, for the benefit of those 2.8 million workers, our military, our law enforcement, let's take that burden off them today. Let's give them some hope to know this body is going to finally do something in a nonpartisan, I call it a nonpartisan way, that we all agree on. We're going to iron out our differences the way you would generally do it, the way it used to be done, by getting onto a bill, voting for cloture, having the will of the Senate work its way, and then hopefully pass it early next week. That would be my suggestion. Again, I'd be willing to do it today. I don't think we could probably handle that because there's things to discuss. That's all I'm asking.
If gentlemen will yield, look, thank you. Look, it'd be great to work this out because there seems to be some agreement that federal employees should not be the ones to bear the burden of a decision they had nothing to do with. I see the Republican leaders here with us on the floor. I think the best way to proceed would be to delay moving forward on the cloture vote on the motion to proceed on your bill, and let's sit down and let's talk about whether or not we can find that common ground. We may not be that far apart. I will just say to the senator, I would say that if you give the president the authority, as your proposal currently does, to decide who to send home and furlough and punish, and it sounds like you're willing to change that, but here's the scenario I worry about. If you listen to Russ Vought and the president, they would just fire those people during the shutdown. That's what they're doing. In fact, they're illegally firing people during the shutdown.
Again, Senator, I really didn't want to come and argue. I really.
Okay, well, why don't we sit down? Why don't we sit down together?
I have to dispute that because even the National Active and Retired Federation Employees Association, who's endorsed my bill, says the bill does not single out favored political functions over disfavored ones. And you understand, under the Anti-Deficiency Act, under the opinions from the Office of Legal Counsel, accepted employees, it's pretty well standard. There may be some tweaks back and forth, which is what you give the latitude of the executive branch. Again, I'm willing to sit down. I'm sure the Republican Congress is willing to sit down and go, okay, what should we do? I think Congress has given way too much authority to the executive branch. I don't mind dialing that back a little bit. But again, the way to approach that is let's get on the bill, let's talk about it, let's offer amendments, amendments that pass by voice vote, and let's get it done. There's a lot of pressure on all of us. We all want to get this done. But again, passing by unanimous consent is not the way to get it done. The way to get it done is the way the process should work. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful to actually see the process work in the Senate? Again, I realize you don't agree 100% on my bill. So
I would love to see the process work.
And then let's sit down in good faith. Let's hammer out amendments and let's get the thing passed next week. Let's do that. That's all I'm asking. Again, I honestly hate to object to this. I don't want to. Okay. But again, this is not the way to pass it. So again, I'll speak to my bill. I know we've got to get votes for that kind of stuff. But again, truthfully, I'm in as good a faith as I possibly can be. We have to get this done. And the way to do that is vote to get on the bill. Let's sit down and talk in good faith, and let's see and hammer out what it might be pretty minor differences when all's said and done. Okay? But with that,
well let me just say, Mr. President, just to say to the Senator Johnson, I'm more than happy to sit down with you. I think we should do that maybe later today, get our teams together, see if we can resolve some of these points. Because if we have the shared view that, number one, no federal employee should be punished for something they had nothing to do with, and that at least for the period of the shutdown, the president should not be able to fire additional people, which is, I think you well know, and this was partly considered by the federal court already, the president actually has less authority to do in a shutdown than when the government's open. But I don't want to debate these issues on the floor right now.
Sure.
I am more than happy to try and sit down with your team and see if we can
Let me quick
resolve
address that. You know, I think this brinkmanship has got to end here. I mean, I've been here 15 years. We should have passed 180 appropriation bills. Before the start of the fiscal year, we've passed 6. Again, a lot of people working in good faith to do that, okay? It's obviously broken. We've got to start working on appropriation